So you told me at the right point.
Thanks, David.
Actually, that's an interesting point. It's been about 105 seconds, hasn't it, since the first practice session last night. And yeah, they haven't really found a lot of time in terms of driving style, setup, race line, or the track rubbering in. Quite interesting, that.
Especially for a street circuit, you compare it to Monaco, the track ramps up a lot and the performance comes throughout the weekend. And this is something Alonso was saying yesterday. It's quite surprising how the track seems to be very consistent, not particularly growing in performance. What about Sebastian Vettel then? He's very much got a seat at the top table now. He's done a 146.614. Reigning world champion Kimi Raikkonen, a real handful coming out of the final corner, goes quicker by 0.6 of a second. And here is Lewis Hamilton. Well, his sector time's doing. Quicker than Raikkonen in Sector 1, and he is quicker than Raikkonen in Sector 2 as well. This is more like the old Lewis Hamilton, brushing the wall, only a cigarette paper's width between him and oblivion. Out of the final corner he goes. This should put him provisionally quicker than Raikkonen. It does, by a margin of 0.4 of a second. But here's the danger man, his world championship rival Felipe Massa, who's become a bit of a street racing specialist this year. He goes quicker than Hamilton. So it's Massa, Hamilton, Raikkonen, the top three after the first runs.
And what can Kovalainen do? Maybe they'll put each car in a slightly different strategy. At the moment, Kovalainen quite a bit slower than Hamilton, and Raikkonen will have lost a tenth or two through that final corner. And just begins to run wide, keeps trying to edge it back in, but it doesn't want to know. Luckily for him, the finish line comes up very quickly. So Massa then fastest. This last run is going to be mighty, isn't it?
Yes, this is where it's all going to come down to. They've been pushing the boundaries, prodding them with a stick just to see where they are. And on the final runs, they're going to go absolutely to the limit as Heikki Kovalainen goes through in 10th. A 148.4 is 3 seconds off the pace, so what's happened there? The first sector was slow, the middle sector wasn't particularly brilliant, but most of the problems, I think, were in the first sector.
Yeah, Kovalainen, that's not all fuel effect. So, interesting to see Hamilton was on the harder tyre this time. We heard that maybe it was the softer tyre, but it wasn't. Definitely the harder tyre that Hamilton went out on. And he didn't seem to be leaving much margin again, Hamilton, did he? It looked as if he was not too much time being left on the table in most of those corners.
Okay, Lewis, currently P2, Massa P1, time losses first and second.
It's Felipe Massa on board. On and out lap then, provisional pole sitter, looking for his 14th career pole position, his 5th of the season so far. Certainly in the second half of the year, pole positions have tended to fall more to the McLarens than the Ferraris. But this is a critical one. It's so difficult to overtake here in Valencia. Massa knows how important it is.
Quite a slow outlap for almost everybody, particularly the Ferraris. In other words, not really pushing the tyres or the brakes too much, and they'll start to build it up. It's 3.15 miles, quite a long track. And these are the sort of lap times they do at Spa for a 7-kilometre track, and this is 5.5, so it tells you how slow it is in certain parts. It doesn't look that slow, does it? As they're fighting the cars. And Raikkonen then sideways in turn 2. It doesn't really matter too much because you're immediately into turn 3 anyway. But it does take away a bit of your confidence when the car lets go like that.
Well, that's been the story of his afternoon, really, hasn't it? It's a case of all arms and elbows and opposite lock for Kimi Raikkonen. Not on the pace of teammate Felipe Massa throughout the weekend, jumping over the bumps there on the way down to turn 7. And how's he looking at the moment? A personal best in the first sector for him. He is slightly faster than Sebastian Vettel, but slower than Lewis Hamilton.
300 slower than Hamilton, that's all though. It's shavings, it's fractions we're talking about here. Raikkonen glances through the 10 and 11 chicane on board with Hamilton, and he's now going to go through that chicane. That's a lot of curve there. The car seemed to be flying through the air just a little bit too long. I wonder if that cost him any time.
And Massa's fastest of anybody in Sector 1. He's 2/10 quicker than Hamilton, so it doesn't look like Hamilton is going to be able to make that time up in the rest of the lap. Massa is looking very strong here, and you can see that Hamilton's trying to squeeze every last ounce of performance out of his car and out of the racetrack, pushing it right to the very limit.
Hamilton's really just a few hundred metres behind this Ferrari, and he locked up and went wide. We saw when we were on board with him. Raikkonen, though, Just the 2 corners to go then. Remember, he got this wrong on his first lap. He had a 10th he wasted, and that works. Massa's flying. Raikkonen goes second critically. Hamilton's got to respond. Has he done damage earlier in the lap with a couple of small errors? And he hasn't. He goes fastest at the moment. Hamilton fastest, but Massa on an incredible lap, it seems.
Yep, he's the fastest of anybody so far in sectors 1 and 2. Hamilton had a brilliant final sector that gives him provisional pole. It's all now on these last few corners for 27-year-old Felipe Massa. 1 point behind Hamilton in the Drivers' Championship. Going into tomorrow's Grand Prix, can he take pole? Yes, he can! A stunning lap by Felipe Massa. Here's Robert Kubica. He's 8th at the moment. He goes up into 4th place, pushing Vettel down into 5th.